He stood there, gripping the broom like a weapon, his face twisted with rage, as the worker's hands, raw and bleeding, tried to shield him from the blows raining down on the cold factory floor. The other workers froze, their eyes wide with horror, as the manager's shouts echoed through the warehouse, a scene of brutality unfolding in a place meant for labor, not violence. From wherever you're watching, whether it's New York, London, Chicago, or Birmingham, share this story. Let the world know what happened in that factory. Speak up, demand justice, and amplify the truth. He was known as Marcus, a 34-year-old black man who had worked at the Grayson manufacturing plant in Cleveland, Ohio, for nearly a decade. Marcus was a quiet worker, always on time, always reliable, his hands calloused from years of operating heavy machinery. His coworkers respected him, not just for his work ethic, but for the way he carried himself, calm, dignified, even when the job wore him down. The factory, a sprawling facility producing automotive parts, was a lifeline for many in the community, but it wasn't a place of warmth. The air was thick with the smell of oil and metal, and the management, led by a man named Robert Callahan, ran the place like a fiefdom. Callahan, a stocky white man in his late 50s, had been the plant manager for 15 years. His reputation was one of unrelenting control. He barked orders, scrutinized every move, and had little patience for mistakes, or for anyone who dared question him. To Marcus, Callahan was just another hurdle in a job that already demanded too much. But for Callahan, Marcus seemed to represent something more, a challenge to his authority, a man who didn't bow or break under his glare. The workers knew the tension was there. They'd seen Callahan single Marcus out before, criticizing his output, questioning his methods, even when Marcus's work was flawless. Whispers circulated among the crew. Callahan didn't like Marcus's quiet confidence, his refusal to grovel. Some said it was racial, others said it was just Callahan's need to dominate. Either way, the air in the factory had been heavy for weeks, like a storm waiting to break. It was a Tuesday morning in October, the kind of gray, chilly day that made the factory's concrete walls feel even colder. Marcus was at his station, operating a hydraulic press, when Callahan stormed onto the floor. His face was red, his eyes narrowed, and he was clutching a broom, its worn bristles caked with dust from the factory's endless grime. He marched straight to Marcus, shouting about a missed quota from the previous shift. "You think you can just slack off and get away with it?" Callahan yelled, his voice cutting through the hum of machinery. Workers glanced up, uneasy, but kept their heads down. Marcus, wiping sweat from his brow, looked at Callahan, his expression calm but firm. "I hit my quota, Mr. Callahan," Marcus said evenly. "Check the logs." Callahan's face twisted. "Don't you talk back to me, boy." The word landed like a slap, and a few workers flinched. Marcus's jaw tightened, but he didn't respond. He turned back to his machine, trying to focus, but Callahan wasn't done. He stepped closer, broom still in hand, his voice rising. "You think you're untouchable? You think I can't replace you?" Callahan spat, his words laced with venom. Marcus kept working, his hands steady on the controls, but his silence only fueled Callahan's rage. "Look at me when I'm talking to you." Marcus turned, meeting Callahan's eyes. "I'm doing my job," he said, his voice low but unyielding. "I don't know what you want from me." What happened next stunned everyone. Callahan raised the broom and swung it, the wooden handle cracking against Marcus's shoulder. The sound was sharp, like a whip, and Marcus staggered back, his hands instinctively rising to protect himself. The other workers froze, their machines idling, as Callahan swung again, this time catching Marcus's forearm. Blood welled up where the rough wood tore into his skin, staining his work gloves red. "Stop!" One worker, a woman named Carla, shouted, but Callahan didn't hear her, or didn't care. He kept swinging, his shouts incoherent now, a mix of curses and accusations. Marcus stumbled, trying to block the blows, his hands taking the brunt of the attack. Blood dripped onto the floor, mixing with the dust and oil, as he backed toward a stack of crates. "Why you doing this?" Marcus gasped, his voice hoarse but steady. "I didn't do nothing wrong." Callahan's response was another swing, this one grazing Marcus's head, leaving a gash above his ear. The workers were shouting now, some pleading for Callahan to stop, others too shocked to move. But Callahan was lost in his fury, his authority challenged, his control slipping. Marcus fell to his knees, his hands raw and bleeding, but he didn't fight back. He wouldn't give Callahan the satisfaction. The attack lasted less than a minute, but to the workers watching, it felt like an eternity. Finally, another supervisor, a man named Jamal, pushed through the crowd and grabbed Callahan's arm, forcing him to drop the broom. "That's enough," Jamal yelled, his voice shaking with anger. Callahan shoved him off, but the spell was broken. He looked around, suddenly aware of the dozens of eyes on him, the blood on the floor, the stunned silence of the factory. Marcus, still on his knees, was breathing heavily, his hands trembling as blood dripped from his fingers. Carla rushed to his side, helping him stand, while another worker called 911. Callahan, his face pale now, muttered something about insubordination and stormed off to his office, slamming the door behind him. The factory was chaos in the aftermath. Workers gathered in small groups, whispering, some crying, others furious. Marcus was taken to the break room, where Carla and another coworker, a man named Lewis, cleaned his wounds as best they could. His hands were a mess, skin torn, knuckles bruised, blood soaking through the makeshift bandages they made from a first aid kit. He didn't say much, just sat there, staring at the floor, his face unreadable. The police arrived within 20 minutes, along with paramedics who treated Marcus on site before taking him to the hospital. The officers questioned the workers, who recounted what they'd seen, their voices thick with outrage. He just kept hitting him. Carla told them, tears streaming down her face. Marcus didn't do anything. He was just working. In the days that followed, the story spread like wildfire. The local news outlets picked it up, and soon, grainy cell phone footage from a worker's phone was circulating online. The video showed Callahan swinging the broom, Marcus trying to shield himself, and the blood on the floor. Social media erupted, with hashtags like #justice for Marcus trending across platforms. Protests formed outside the factory, with community leaders demanding Callahan's arrest and the company's accountability. Grayson Manufacturing issued a statement calling the incident an unfortunate misunderstanding and claiming they were investigating thoroughly. But the workers weren't buying it. They organized, sharing their own stories of Callahan's abusive behavior, verbal beratements, unfair write-ups, and, in some cases, racial slurs. Marcus, recovering in the hospital with stitches in his hands and head, became a symbol of something larger. A man who had endured too much for too long, targeted for his race and his refusal to break. Callahan was suspended pending investigation, but that wasn't enough for the community. They wanted charges filed, assault, hate crime, anything that would hold him accountable. The police were tight-lipped, saying only that they were gathering evidence. Meanwhile, Marcus's coworkers rallied around him, raising money for his medical bills and lost wages. They spoke to reporters, their voices raw with emotion, describing Marcus as a good man, a hard worker, someone who didn't deserve this. But the tension didn't end with the incident. Rumors swirled that Grayson Manufacturing was trying to cover it up, offering Marcus a settlement to stay quiet. Others said Callahan had connections in the city, that he'd walk free no matter what. The workers grew restless, some threatening to strike if justice wasn't served. The factory, once a place of routine labor, had become a battleground for something bigger, a fight for dignity, for accountability, for change. 3 weeks after the attack, Marcus returned to the factory. His hands were still bandaged, his movements slow, but he walked through the doors with his head held high. The workers greeted him with nods and quiet words of support, but the air was heavy. Callahan was gone, fired, according to the company, though no charges had been filed yet. The investigation was ongoing, the police said, but Marcus wasn't holding his breath. He'd seen how the system worked, how men like Callahan could slip through the cracks. That day, as Marcus stood at his station, he overheard a conversation between two managers in the break room. They were talking about Callahan, about how he'd been let go quietly to avoid a lawsuit. One of them mentioned a name, a city council member who'd allegedly pulled strings to keep the case from escalating. Marcus's blood ran cold. He realized this wasn't just about one man's rage. It was about a system that protected people like Callahan, that let them wield power without consequence. He didn't say anything, not then, but that night Marcus met with a lawyer, a woman named Angela who'd been following his case. She told him the footage and witness statements were enough to push for criminal charges, maybe even a civil suit against the company. "This isn't just about you," she said. "It's about every worker who's been silenced, every person who's been hurt because of who they are." Marcus nodded, his jaw tight. He wasn't a fighter by nature, but he was tired. Tired of being targeted, tired of being expected to stay quiet. He agreed to move forward, to tell his story, to demand justice not just for himself, but for everyone who'd been wronged in that factory. From wherever you're watching, whether it's Cleveland, London, Atlanta, or Manchester, don't let this story fade. Share Marcus's fight. Demand accountability from Grayson Manufacturing and from every workplace where power is abused. Speak up, because silence lets men like Callahan walk free. Justice starts with us.